All right, so today's webinar is our second attempt at a webinar for the IT Documentation Users Group. Based on feedback from last time, we decided to pick a topic of IT glue tips and tricks. First off, a little information about the IT Documentation Users Group. It is a Facebook group that Tracy, one of our panelists today, helped found. Tracy, can you give us a couple of seconds about why you started this group and what you hope it achieves?
I started the group because I went looking for help in organizing and setting up my documentation. And I thought, well, I will go out and go to the forum, you know, and talk to other glue users. And lo and behold, I couldn't find one. I thought, well, I'll start a Facebook group and see if I can get other people to join. And I did some advertising through some other Facebook groups I was a member of and got a lot of people to join. But I found out a lot of people were like me. We just didn't know how to start, where to start, and really how to do it. But we all seemed to know it was really important to do. So that's how the group came along, is more to do stuff like this, where we're sharing ideas and getting inspiration from other people. And that's why it's put together. And as you can see, it's grown. We hit a mark. When we hit over 200 users, it really took off. I think Facebook was out there pushing it more. And so we have gotten users from all over the country, especially recently. We've really gotten a lot of international people, and I hope some of those people get to make it today, despite the time difference.
I hope so too. So real quick about the meeting. Today I am just facilitating. I want to help coordinate between Tracy and Eric. I joined the forum pretty early on in one of those groups that Tracy was broadcasting on. She invited me to help admin the group in August. I have been in IT my entire adult life and part of my teenage life as well, professionally. So I've been out there in the ranks with you guys as well. And then founded my own process consulting company specifically for IT firms in 2017. I'm now managing 3 IT glue instances, which Tracy and I were just fighting over some issues this morning with that. So we live it and breathe it. I am facilitating this meeting today instead of presenting. So if you would like to use any of your features inside of Zoom for like raising your hand, asking a question, asking to speed up, slow down, sending a chat message, those are perfectly fine. I'll be able to watch those and I will find a place to insert your questions for Tracy and Eric to answer. There will be, I will stop for Q&A after every person's presentation about their specific topic. And at the end, we'll also have a chance for all questions and answers and for us to compare notes. And if you prefer to talk via audio, you do have permission to unmute yourself if you so choose. Please watch your background noise if you leave it unmuted. Without further ado, this is a panel discussion about IT Glue. It is not sponsored by IT Glue or even given with permission of IT Glue, even though they may or may not be in attendance. Please submit your questions via chat. We're hoping Terry with MacTech can join us, but he's been extremely busy. He didn't know if he can make it today. I have his notes. I might give you his little pep talk for his slides when they come up. And we also have Tracy Harden with Next Century Technologies joining us, and Eric Anderson with the Purple Guys. And they will all have a longer introduction during their moment in the spotlight. We're going to start with Terry's information. Terry's longtime active duty USAF. I had a couple of conversations with him out of Wichita Falls. They've recently switched from Monkeybox to IT Glue. And I love the simple advice that he gave when we were discussing. And it was simply to get started. And I was like, Terry, what do you mean? We always have this fear of the unknown and of all the work that we have to do to get started. But these things take time. And just to give you an example, from another one of my clients. This is in case you haven't seen this chart, this is an IT Glue under global, under, I believe it is engagement. This is activity points, and this is over a 2-year history for this client. What I'd like you to notice is in the first third of the graph, or even more than a third, it took him that long to get to 10,000 points. Next thing you know, over the whole center third of the graph, that they skyrocket to 40,000. And you would think at some point you finish your documentation and it starts to level out. But lo and behold, at the end of the last third of the graph, it's up double again, 70,000. And I think the moral of the story is you got to get started because you have to lay that foundation, and things get easier and easier and easier, which is the whole point of IT Glue. I don't see any questions yet, so we're going to go on and introduce our next panelist as well. Our next panelist is Tracy Harden of Next Century Technologies. I'm going to actually let her introduce herself in greater detail.
Hi. So anyway, as you know, I started the Facebook group, and I am the owner and founder of Next Century Technologies. I've been running the company since 2001. I hired my first employees. In 2011, I now have 6 employees plus myself, and I started adding MSP services in 2012. Like I said before, I found the group basically to learn how to document better. I think documentation is key to improving efficiency in our companies, making money, being more profitable, and good documentation allows me to go on vacation. It's really nice to be able to go out of town and trust that my staff can take things over and not have to worry about what password I have in my head or what notes I have in my email. So that's the reason I started the group. And we can go on to the next slide there. So I took a little bit different angle. And again, I'm not really good at documentation. I'm learning. I'm truly a student of it. So I did my standard operating procedures. I organized them by number, and I got that idea from accounting systems. A lot of accounting systems, they actually number their accounts. So I took that idea and applied it to my SOPs. And here in the first column, you're going to see an actual overview. I took this snapshot up right out of my IT Glue of how I ordered my documents. I have financial and administration, compliance policies, IT, managed services, human resources, sales, and marketing. And as you can see, some of these have no documents in it because I'm still working with Glue. I've only been with Glue a little over a year, so I'm still learning. If you go inside, drill down inside the finance and administration, where I have most of my documents, this is where I've been focusing most of my time at, you'll see it starts with the number 1, it's in the thousands. And I have 1,001 Autotask, 1,200 QuickBooks, 1,300 financial, 1,500 employees, 1,600 taxes, 1,900 automobiles, because I have a couple of company cars. I dedicated a whole folder to Autotask because it's huge. It's the most important program we use in my business. Everything runs on it. So it gets its own separate folder. QuickBooks is the second most important thing. That's my accounting platform. We have a lot of documents and procedures revolving around QuickBooks. Those first 2, as you can see, definitely most of my documents lie there. But if you drill down inside the 1001 Autotask folder, you're going to see this is where I really like the numbering system. I ordered the numbers, the order of the documents matter, and the numbers help keep them together. So, for example, if you go down to 1020, you're going to see building a gold and platinum contract. 1021 and 1022 are going to see how to build a silver contract. And there's 2 parts to silver. So just opening up the folder and browsing, using the numbers, it automatically orders stuff logically for me. So I got all my contracts in one area. And I'm really consistent, and I kind of kept to a standard on how I named my documents as well. What's cool is if you're inside the 1021 document, there's a reference link to the 1022 document. If you're in my employee handbook and we reference something in the employee handbook that has to do with HR, you will actually see a reference to a 6000 document. It might say reference our vehicle use policy, document number 6010. And so what's really cool is you go into Glue, you want to find one of these documents, all you do is type the 4-digit number and you go exactly to that document. If, on the other hand, I go into Glue and I type in contract, I might pull up 10, 15 different options. If I type in 1022, because I want to find build a silver contract, it's going to take me straight there. So the numbering system helps me in 2 ways. It groups like documents together, shows relationships between documents, puts them all together, and I organize them in a way that's important to me. So as you look inside this 1001 Autotask folder, the very first document is a new user setup for Autotask 1002. That is like one of the most important things we do. One of the things we need to find is how to set up a new user. And approving and posting is really important in Autotask. So the higher, the numbering, how I number things and how important they are, they go to the top. If they're all related, I put them in like the 1020s are all dedicated to contracts. As you can see, it's 10, 20, 21, 22, 26, 28, 29 are all related to contracts. And I left myself room. That's key. There's room there to add more related to contracts. And I'm sure that will come along soon. So I like the numbering system. It helps me keep organized. It's easy to reference one document inside another if we need to. And of course, I use the relationships within Glue to keep them all linked together as well.
I have 2 questions for you. Just a reminder, anybody who has a question, you can type it into the chat, or you may unmute yourself and ask the question directly as well. So Tracy, you mentioned leaving room. How do you decide in numbering when you need room and when you don't?
I don't have, I've never done this before. So I don't even do it this way in my accounting system. I've never done numbers in accounting. I got the inspiration from accounting because when I saw this, I just knew I wanted all my contract documents together. So I picked 1020 as a place to keep them all together. And I just gave a book of numbers, 1020 through 1029 are all gonna be contract related. I don't, I'm kind of just learning as I go. I knew Autotask was going to be a big folder. It needed a lot of numbers. So I kind of set aside a big area for it to grow into. And I may outgrow this. I don't know. I'm kind of learning as I go along, but I really like the numbering system. It keeps things well organized for me.
And the second question is, it says document naming version 2.0. What did 1.0 look like?
I don't know. 1.0,
I could probably speak to it. This is Eric from the Purple Guys. We're probably running 1.0. We don't have it very well organized like this. In fact, kudos to Tracy to get all of their internal documentation in here because, we have a separate accounting department, billing. We have account managers that do their own thing. We have sales that do their own thing. We typically use IT Glue around the technical aspect of it and keeping our technical documents in line. But IT Glue is really company-wide. And speaking to Tracy's point of, being able to go on vacation as an MSP owner and being able to step back, you need everything in your SOP. Every department, every procedure, every part of creating a contract if you're not there. Or even if people just have questions about it, did you look there first? Putting this kind of documentation in place really benefits reducing distractions and interruptions throughout your day. I'm sure, Tracy, when you have this rolled out, you have way less people coming to you asking you, where's this, where's that? How do I do this? How do I do that? And your answer is probably, well, did you look in Glue? Because it's there. So kudos for this. And like I said, I think we're a good example of 1.0. We don't have all of it organized this way. This is a really great task. One other thing I would mention is the numbering system that you have there is only in the title of the document.
Mm-hmm.
So the great thing about IT Glue is you could change the title over and over again. It'll never change the URL. The URL and all the linking stays there. So if she runs out of numbers in the 1,000 to 200 range and she needs to reorganize everything, it's just a matter of going into each of those links and renaming the title, not recreating all the linking and the related items.
I did learn that changing the company name will change the URL, but all the other folders and stuff, it's the same URL, yes.
Now, I will say that is what you say about the name of the documents is true, Eric. But however, in my employee handbook, I reference article numbers of other documents in the 6,000 folder for human resources. In that case, that's a Word document, so I would have to manually jump over there and change it.
Why is
and
that
I'm
not
keeping that in mind because I built that. Quit laughing. I built that in Word, and I'm using and since I print copies of them, you can build an index in Word that's really cool. And I'm not sure how to replicate that in Glue at all. So, and you've seen that handbook, it's a beast. And I'm not really thrilled about breaking it apart and putting it into Glue yet at this point. because I do printed copies. Every employee, even every new employee, gets a printed copy in a folder physical they can have. Plus, they can go to Glue and get a copy. We have both.
Okay. And I've yet to see anybody fully go to IT Glue without using one special document they have somewhere else of some sort, for sure. And Tracy, you and I were talking about a different numbering system. You're considering adding letters to that.
Yeah, somebody I know had that system, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's great. He was, instead of like, for example, human resources, I have it as 6,000. This person who will remain unnamed had HR like 01 or HR 02 or HR. So the word, the letters in front give you an idea that it was tied to a human resources document. That would even be better to organize stuff. You could do, start your folder names with HR in 2 numbers. You can do finance in 2 numbers, or FIN, or IT in 2 numbers, managed services in 2 numbers. So there's different ways of organizing it. I do like the letters. I wish I had thought of that. I was lucky because I was kind of new to Glue when I started this numbering system. So when I decided to do the numbering system and go back and number stuff, it didn't take me very long because I didn't have much out there. So if I had 10,000 documents, this would be kind of hard to go back and renumber stuff. It would take quite a while.
So backing up a comment, if it's not an auto task, it didn't happen. And if it's not an IT Glue, it doesn't exist, right?
That's right. I ain't kidding. And I'm not, as you can tell by my document numbers under these titles, I am still working on getting stuff organized in here. And I think, going back to what Eric said, under documents, those folders roughly relate to actual departments inside my company, although my company is kind of small yet. I don't actually have departments, but this is meant to grow. If I have 20, 30, 40, 50 people, I hope my main structure doesn't change much. That's my goal. When you're doing a main structure, think big so that you grow into it. You don't want to have to change your structure later.
Great advice, Tracy. Again, if you guys have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type into the chat window. Tracy has one more tip to share.
Oh, yes. This is one I just came up with recently. We were trying to figure out, so we want photos every time we go to clients. Some of our clients are remote, and if you have to walk somebody through something or resetting a piece of equipment, it's great to have photos. So, but I found out with my staff is that not everybody took the same photo of the same stuff. So I thought, well, if I had a template in Glue, I could put a template out there that would guide you and tell you what to make pictures of. So here on the left are some examples. All of this is equipment, either at my office or at my house, but it's mocked up to look like an example at a client. Unfortunately, Glue does not let you do captions to pictures, or I have not found a way to do that yet. I would love to have captions on pictures. So if you look at this first one, the first line relates to the first picture, the second line relates to the middle picture, and the third line of the untangle is, of course, the third picture. And I was just trying to make sure that when my staff goes on site, they take the same photos of the same equipment. And in some case, the same photo may be used twice, because if you look at this example, the top line, the middle photo actually has a UPS as well as Spectrum equipment. So that picture could be repeated at the bottom when it talks about different UPSs. We also have how I built this. The next picture pops up here. I just made a template. They don't have actual templates in Glue. You can't call something a template that I have seen. You can make copies of an existing document and rename them. So I made this quote unquote template where you put the client name in the middle, in the beginning, and put the word photos. And then it tells you each type of photo I want you to take. Obviously, I want the ISP and firewall photos, and below that I put this equipment is located. This clues my text into, I need to know where this is at. I need to know what building or what site if there's multiple sites, and in some cases it's all in the same building. So it's easy. But this tells you what items I want taken pictures of. And this is in progress. We're getting ready to roll this out, but this is one of my ideas of standardizing my documents, getting the same type of quality documents across all my clients. So this is why I did this.
Sounds great. Once again, if you have questions, you are welcome to unmute yourself or to send it in the chat. And we'll move on and introduce Eric, who's already waiting a good bit for us. Eric Anderson's with the Purple Guys and is a member of our forum and graciously volunteered to give a presentation with us today. Eric, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Actually, before I get started and go into my background, I'm just curious from the participants that's there, if you guys can pop open the chat window, just tell me, are you guys using ITGlue, yes or no? And then how big is your company? So I'd just be curious for the participants that we have to see what kind of mix we have, people that use it, don't use it, and then the size of the company. So a little bit about my background. So I've been with the Purple Guys now for 2 years. I came from a smaller MSP called We Are IT. Purple Guys purchased them in 2017. My team grew from 6 techs that we were size of a team of 13 people. 13 people in the company. We had 6 techs full-time that I oversaw as a service manager. And when we merged, we grew to 44 people. I oversee 16 people now. I have 2 coordinators, 3 team leads, 3 pods, and each pod has 60 to 80 customers that we manage in each of them. So really important for us to have documentation done properly, consistently, and well across the organization. It's very much a culture, like Alan said there, if it's not an ITGlue, it didn't happen. That creates accountability, a shared responsibility for the whole team to contribute to it, make it grow, flag things that are wrong, take the time to go back and fix things. It's a concerted effort and it takes a lot of time, but it is something that provides consistent results, reduces inefficiencies. Our customers love it. We're able to print out a procedure or share a procedure on something for their end users. We'll happily share it on a run book. So we have enterprise and we can just export a run book and hand them their documentation. It is not something that we are controllers of. We're purely curating their information. We don't own it. It's theirs. When we offboard, if there's another company that uses ITGlue that is taking over, we export it and share it with them. We don't have a problem with that because we feel like that goes both ways. We've acquired customers and have struggled through the documentation process, and sometimes we get that reciprocated. So just good karma. I know not all relationships end the way you want them to. But I wanted to talk a little bit about today just the documents to related items ratio. So one of the exercises I did about a year ago with ITGlue, I had one of their techs jump on, go through all of our documentation and say, hey, what are we doing well? What are we doing poorly? What can we improve on? So one of the areas was related items. So part of the power of ITGlue is being able to link things together. So being able to link a configuration to an application, to a password, to a vendor. These are all different sections in ITGlue, but if you're able to add those, you make it very easy for your techs to have a point of entry, because they may be looking at a ticket and go, oh, well, this is an application issue, and they go to the application. They may not know what configuration this is on, what other things are related to it. So we scored very poorly on this. So the way that they figure this out is you add up your number of configs, the number of docs, and the number of passwords that you have. And then you divide that by the number of related items. This is all on the main dashboard in ITGlue. So you take those 3 things and divide it and get a ratio. And really the examples of good and the examples of bad here would be, 2,000 configurations, so 2,000 endpoints maybe, firewalls, networking equipment, 1,000 documents, 1,200 passwords. So you have 4,200 items divided by 500 related items, 8.4. So really poor. That's actually a real ratio where we were. Not the numbers were correct, but we have been able to drop that over a concerted effort of everybody just taking a second while they're making a documentation page and going, what relates to this? Similar to Tracy's point with the photos. Okay, well, I have a picture here of the server and a picture of the firewall. I should be adding related items back to those configurations. I should put a related item back to the firewall password, so it's on this page. So if somebody comes to it trying to find out, well, here's the picture of the firewall, and I'm trying to walk through the user. Okay, now it's on. Now I got green lights. What's my next step? Well, let me log into it. So one click right there, it's already on the pages related. So we have found that that's helped tremendously. Real world, 7.1 to 4.1, in a year is really excellent progress. IT Glue Nirvana, they say 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1 is really ideal. They have even some members that get down to 1-to-2. So for every configuration or document, they have 2 related items attached to those. You want to be careful not to relate items just for the sake of relating items either. There needs to be some value there. They need to be connected somehow. But that's kind of my help. Hopefully that makes sense to you all.
So we are still taking questions by unmuting yourself and talking to us, or by sending it in the chat window. I have a question for you in the meantime, Eric. So you mentioned we just, related some items while we're in there, made a concerted effort. What type of efforts did you have to go through as a manager or an IT administrator to get the team on board with doing that?
Sure. So we have a Wednesday staff meeting every Wednesday from 7:30 to 8:30. Our whole team attends. It's mandatory. So we took a good portion of that to walk through what IT Glue relayed back to us. And we showed where the holes were. We pulled up documentation that was just done. So we would pull up the recently created list and just go through it and go, here are some examples of things that could be related back to this. So didn't want to throw people under the bus and call out specifics, but we just went through it in a non-judgmental way. We also do some awards quarterly around this. So Alan talks about engagement tab under global. He keeps track of who's creating documents, who's making edits. We give our top performers every quarter a gift card. We do a $50 or $100 Amazon gift card. They also get a button, professor of documentation, that they get to add to their bag or their workstation or desk area. And that's helped create a culture and keep the culture going. It's really, none of this works without the people. So keeping it people focused is the, you can't do all documentation by yourself. It's just not going to work, right. no matter what size you are. Unless you're a single owner and you're using it just to keep things in there so that when you do add that second employee, you're not going to have to regurgitate everything that into one place. So definitely look at it as a scaling thing. We're at 44, employees. We're not stopping there. We have visions of growing the company bigger than that. So every time we add new employees, it helps for onboarding, reduces training time, gives them one place to look. And like, Terry said, the inefficiencies, or Tracy said that the inefficiencies are reduced tremendously when you have your documentation correct.
Okay, Brian has a question for you. How do you count the number of related item links?
That should be on your dashboard in IT Glue. They have a related item stat there.
I actually, based on this, I took a couple of minutes before this. I went to go look at my dashboard, and I also had difficulty finding it.
Finding the related item?
Yeah, I went to dashboard. Is there certain rights you have to see it?
That's a good question. If you give me a second, I could log in and take a look at it.
All right. So, Brian, we'll come back to you on the answer to that one. Great question. And another question that I had, when you reward top behavior in IT Glue, do you find that a person's position may give them more opportunity to update documentation, and you had some repeat winners every quarter?
Sure. Yes. So we have our onboarding team, definitely creates way more documentation than the help desk. but we also have a fair play clause, so you can't win back-to-back quarters. You could do that back-to-back months, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that we just have that prevented so that you don't have the same person over and over winning.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, you can ask questions via the chat window privately or to the public. You can raise your hand inside of the Zoom participation list or unmute your microphone and just say hi. We got a couple of questions during the registration process. I'm going to go ahead and pull those up and let Tracy and Eric attempt to answer them as best they can. We had a question.
I have a question about what Eric was just talking about on doing the ratios. I kind of looked at this too when I saw what Eric was going to talk about, and I have a couple of struggles with this. For one thing, some of this includes vendors, so I have a lot of vendor information in here. I like keeping my vendors in glue, mostly for the management of the company, not so much that the employees need to know. Occasionally they do. If there's partners, then we'll have our contacts in there. So these numbers include those kind of entities. Also, it's a challenge for me because I have break fix and MSP. Well, I don't document my break fix nearly to the level I do my MSP. I would love this report based on only my MSP clients, but you cannot go in there and categorize the type of clients they are. So maybe someday you can in Glue, but for me, this number is kind of hard for me to, really get behind. Because we don't actively, document out our break fix the way we do our MSP clients.
So yeah, the way that you use IT Glue is certainly going to affect this. How many flexible assets you choose to document instead of configurations, or instead of having a document written, you're creating a separate page for it. All those, how many passwords you create instead of inline passwords, which I hope nobody's doing, but it's not a perfect system, and I couldn't find any documentation in IT Glue anywhere talking about this. So this is one of those tips that, we got some time with IT Glue to have them go through our system and make some recommendations. None of this was on the onboarding or training, setting up accounts. So it's not a perfect tool, but maybe it's a guide to see how things are connected. Really, the end goal is to make sure that your techs can get to things without having to search over and over and over again, right? So logically, things just go from one place to the other. You want them to go down a rabbit hole where the information lives.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, and Tracy, my answer I usually give to all clients is say yes, but we're different. The metrics don't apply to be the same. You're right. It's different, but we all can agree that the more connected it is, the better. So maybe your targets won't be the same as Eric's targets are best in class. They'll just be different because of your client makeup, and that's okay. Just seek to improve it incrementally, bit at a time.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
No worries. So I had logged into our dashboard, and under system usage, last 60 days is where I have those stats, and related items is one of those. So I have organizations, assets, configurations, contacts, documents, domains, location, passwords, related items, certificates, and users. So I don't know if that's something that you can set on your dashboard from the back end. It's set that way for me, so I apologize if it's hidden down in your account somewhere.
And Brian found the answer as well on his own, also looking into it. Dashboard above the system user graph, and there's a number. So yeah, he found it as well.
Okay, good.
It was a tie race. So one question we got submitted by Sebastian during registration was how to best organize devices and equipment. It seems like you have to have them all under configurations, and it's hard to find stuff. We had a little pre-chat about this, such as configurations in IT Glue. Who would like to take a first stab at it?
I guess I'm trying to understand the question properly. Of course, for me, our RMM feeds into IT Glue, and it comes in on the configuration side. So when I look at configurations, and I'm looking at now here on my screen, I got the name, status, type, and serial number. this is under a particular client, but if I can change the order of what I see things in by clicking on type, and I can order it alphabetically by type. So I guess I don't find it hard to find as long as everybody's equipment is under the correct organization name. Maybe I need maybe this needs to be more a specific question.
And earlier, Eric, you were mentioning that you don't like storing things and configurations in ITGlue. That's what flexible assets for, because configurations are actually controlled outside of ITGlue. Is that correct?
Well, I think it depends on the type. So, and this is around onboarding and training. Because we have it linked to our RMM, we have it syncing with, we're a ConnectWise Automate shop. So we have Automate syncing with ITGlue. So any managed configuration will get deleted if we have to delete the agent for any reason. Oftentimes, and I'm sure all our RMMs are like this, we have to uninstall and reinstall an agent from time to time, and it pops in as a different ID. Or we offboard and you lose it, or it gets uninstalled incorrectly, whatever the case is. Once that resyncs back to ITGlue, it's then purged from the system. So we don't like to store passwords, notes about the system in any managed config. So managed workstations, managed servers. But we have our firewalls, our switches in those other configurations. So really any hardware goes in there. So yeah, I mean, we have flexible assets for like printers, applications, WAN information, or wireless information, security information. So we try to not keep things under the configs that way, because we're afraid of losing things. So that's my only pause point for that if you're trying to do that.
So to ask maybe a same question, second direction is, so you do have configurations that you rely on in ITGlue that may not have an attached flexible asset and vice versa. Is that correct?
That's a good question. I'd have to look at that. I can't say definitively either way.
Many of my clients are actually in the transition to ITGlue, so they're still very reliant on the configurations they had set in ConnectWise Manage. So they're still putting everything in ConnectWise Manage as they used to, then creating a flexible asset with all the extra details they want, connecting to the config. But I wonder if a lot of that's just vestigial. It's just a habit, and if one day configurations might go away for them.
So we were a everything lives in ConnectWise or didn't exist shop before I moved to the Purple guys. So we are IT. We did everything under ConnectWise configs, and it was the same thing there. We'd go inactive and it'd be harder to find, but we would put clear line passwords in there, procedure write outs in the notes about what to do. So really in ITGlue, those things kind of get broken out. So you have the main config, and the information there is going to report in on warranty information maybe, and the stats of the system. But you really want to link out separate things like your password, your procedures for things, and all the other documentation really should go in documents, passwords, or flexible assets.
So segueing into procedures, can you give us an example of a type of procedure that would be attached to a flexible asset? And I'm kind of moving on to Jason's question.
Sure. For applications, we have separate documentation that gets attached or related with step-by-step instructions for installations of any line of business application. So we have a specialty app that we support for a customer, construction business, a heavy bid. So we have a step-by-step process as a document that lives in the document section under procedures for that customer. And it's tied to the application. The application has the information maybe about the licensing and the products. We may have a vendor link to the vendor information, their account number or support phone number if we need help, or to make a ticket with them. One of the things that we were discussing is where we can put SLA times for line of business support. because we have a lot of these line of business application support agreements out there, and our customers don't realize what level of support they get. So we don't really have a place right now in IT Glue to keep that. But we'll create a ticket with, say, heavy bid, and they're on the bronze support plan. Well, their SLA is 24 hours. And to the customer, when they read that on an agreement and sign their contract, they go, 24 hours, whatever, we're down for that amount of time, we can live with it. Well, it's 24 business hours, so it's 3 days. So can you afford to be down for 3 days? So some of the frustration that we can try to iron out is, setting that expectation with the customer up front. Hey, I put a support ticket in with heavy bid, just to let you know they have 3 days to get working on it. Usually we hear a what? And then that forces them to maybe upgrade to that silver or gold plan so that they're getting the right response and the fastest resolution.
So in an organization your size, the solution seems straightforward, which is you add a field in the flexible asset that's for the SLA time.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously there's other things you have to consider in your organization to make it happen, or you would have already solved that problem. What are those other considerations?
That's the challenge with growing, right? So if you have an excellent structure in place like Tracy's building there, with 6 people, and looking at it from as a business owner of 2 people or 3 people in your company, you're wearing a ton of hats, and you have to step out and say, okay, well, I am the salesperson, I am the marketing person, I am the CTO, I am the CEO, and you have to start envisioning there of what those different processes and procedures are in place as you grow. You build out your documentation that way. And I feel like for us, change is a lot harder when you're bigger, right? So now instead of going through 50 or 60, customers to go true up those SLAs, now we have over 200 that we have to go track down, and it just gets a lot harder to implement. So hopefully I answered your question. I'm not sure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
So next is total open live Q&A. If you have a question, ask it. You may unmute yourself. You may raise your hand and I can unmute for you. You can also ask a question via chat. I'm going to give one more bonus tip before opening up questions. I see we already have one coming in. And that's just, it's been an epidemic for me for the last couple of months, is that when I talk to people about documentation, they're using IT Glue or they just moved, and they're kind of doing it and they don't quite get it. They're doing it, but they don't quite know what for. I mean, they understand where it's supposed to be, but it's not there yet, perhaps because of this interconnectedness, this relationship ratio. However, I found the most handy SOP to start with. It was actually the new user setup template. Everybody seems to have some challenges there. And I like how interconnected that one is, because typically when I set up a new user setup template, it's what applications do they need? Well, for applications, you have to have application flexible assets created. What printers do they have access? Again, that's a tag to printer assets. What data drives do they need access to, or folder shares? Again, tags. And usually we end up starting there and deciding those things, and it turns out that's usually the process they complain about the most. Like, oh, we sold 4 new PCs and added 3 new users last week, and it's taking us forever. The client called back because he forgot a step, or the new guy didn't know he was supposed to add QuickBooks. And all those things are answered in there. And I have a question from Kenny. Tracy, I do not see that question.
Okay, I'll read it out. He asks, what tips would you give to a team looking to choose a documentation solution? Is something better than nothing? Or is it time lost to bother having documentation prior to selecting a system? My team is trying to recommit themselves to authoring documentation and also maintaining it. We found that we're pretty good at creating a piece of documentation initially, then trail off after that. And I think you used more documentation solutions than I have. So I was wondering how you would answer that.
I'll take a shot, and Eric and Tracy, feel free to also answer. This comes down to a process is only as good as the reward that it gives. If you tell people you have to document, this is what happens. They document for a time, but they don't see the purpose in doing it. So it kind of trails off. And when you find that one place to gain purchase, that one thing that makes so much sense that they want to go to ITGlue to read it, to use it, it's kind of a self-fulfilling reward to go to the next one, to keep creating it. And that's why I kind of just mentioned that the new user setup template was a great place that I started, because there's a lot of steps to setting up a computer. There's your company's way to set up a computer, and then there's your client's way to set up a computer. And even in there might have 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways they need different users set up. And that's a lot of information that most people can't remember. I mean, it's only your techs who've been there 5, 10 years that have that in their head properly. So I say pick a place that everybody cares about. Start there and get everybody involved in the entire process, not running the one SOP. One other strategy I use is I actually always have a service team meeting, even in small organizations, even if it's 2 or 3 people. The service team gets together, they prioritize their issues. Most of the time it is something related to process or documentation, and the team helps figure it out. You might have all the answers as a service manager and owner, and you're probably right. But by getting them to come to that conclusion, they're going to be further bought in and keep helping the process. And if I miss the mark at all, Kenny, feel free to chat back and let us know. Eric, did you want to take a crack at that one?
No, you guys did a good job on that. I think I saw Brian Menzel asked a question here about any automation scripts for ITGlue. Found their GitHub is pretty sparse. We don't use a lot of automation in our ITGlue. There is a company called LionGuard that is doing a lot of automation tasks, especially on onboarding. They're connecting things through Active Directory, Office 365 user groups and permissions. So check them out. They're relatively reasonable to implement, and they'll do a demo or walkthrough. They probably have a lot of webinars on their website that you can watch too. Alan, do you have experience using LionGuard at all?
I do not. I definitely heard part of the sales pitch at IT Nation last year, and I didn't quite catch my interest yet. It may very well do next time.
It's definitely maturing. Every time I see it, I see something a little bit different that I like. So,
and I want to defend my statement for those who know me. I am very to the point. I am not attracted to bright and shiny. So I have to have a glaring hole to fill before I find a new tool, because I always believe in handwritten process first and then we automate. So I'm always skeptical of tools at first. And to ITGlue automation, obviously there is the Office 365 integration now. My clients, they like to implement it because it's doable, but it doesn't provide a whole lot of value that I've seen. It basically provides mailbox stats per contact. And Eric, Tracy, if you use it, feel free to let me know if I missed something that it does. And I did see something on GitHub related to a script to populate more Office 365 stuff. But me being a process consultant and not an API writer, it was quite lengthy with scripts that I couldn't quite follow despite a computer science background. So I was afraid to execute.
Yeah, we haven't implemented 365 integration yet. They're on the path, so I would say in the next 12 months we're going to see more and more of it. They probably have a half a dozen integrations right now. I know they released a few around GlueCon and a couple others in the fall. Auvik, I think, was one of them. If you were using that service, and I think they had some maybe Ubiquity or Cisco integration as well.
And another minor one is sending a notification to Slack and/or Teams when documentation is updated or created. A lot of folks will put that into a Slack channel, for example, so they can kind of have a change log. And for them, they'll go to the change log before a service meeting and go, hey, there might have been 18 updates, but they recognize that 3 or 4 of them are actually really cool new processes, and they will share those in front of the whole team out loud, so they get looked at as well.
That's awesome.
We also have a participant that has their hand up, John Ashby.
Am I just horrible at facilitating?
Yeah, you're a little slow.
Hey, so I had two questions essentially, and I'll start off with one that will help kind of pertain to what we're talking about, and then I've got another one that may be a rabbit trail. So my first one is, how do you guys keep everybody on the same naming syntax when it comes to like passwords, especially to make sure that it's clear about what is actually being documented?
That's something that we're currently working with, trying to get better at. Oftentimes the text put in the password as admin as the description, and then a username of whatever it is and the password whatever it is and a note. When you go to the password section, you see admin.
Yeah, I've got a few of those too.
Yeah, so I think that's inherently an issue, but just making the text slow down, really just load it up in a team meeting and go, here's the problem, guys, gals. Let's make sure we're doing it, putting descriptions of what all these titles are.
So as a funny coincidence, just this morning, I actually finished writing our templated password naming policy. It's written with Passportal in mind, and I'm still working on customizing it to include passwords and IT glue, as well as ConnectWise Manage. I'm glad to share that with you. I'll share my contact info on the next slide when we're done. Feel free to email me and I'll send you a copy.
Yeah.
But just like Eric was saying, it's really about coming to an agreement on what that is, putting some logic behind it, obviously, so that you realize how to differentiate, and agreeing to it. And of course, that document goes in IT glue for you to reference if you ever are in doubt. I do the same thing for equipment naming, PC naming, and I even have a process, which is how you name your processes in IT glue and where you store them.
I love it.
Yeah, one of the things that we joke about is having an SOP, how to write an SOP. That is definitely that keeps things consistent as you grow. Having a template or a document that you can copy. Tracy showed that example today around the photo templates. That's really, really important as you to maintain some standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really wish Glue had on the left side where it's got core assets, apps, and services. I really wish there was a section called templates, and I can just put that template stuff, key ones in there. So you can just click it and find it in 2 seconds.
Yeah. There is a feature request for that on the forums. I know I have voted it up before myself. Different reasons for me is that I don't use IT Glue personally because I do process for a living. So every process that I write is designed to give to somebody else. And there's no template mechanism for that in IT Glue. So I just have to handwrite it anyways and re-implement it. So there's definitely a feature request out there.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so we'll move on to my second question is MyGlue. I'm just now getting into, I've got a customer who is very interested in MyGlue. I just didn't know if you guys had any tips or experience on efficiently starting this off, getting the right group set up, and just really how to implement it well. I know there's a lot of really good documentation that they put out, but I didn't know if you guys had any experience to kind of speak into about MyGlue.
Well, I'll tell you that I don't use MyGlue and I don't recommend it. I found it not by default. When you create a password, it's open to everybody in the MyGlue group, and I could not. They're supposed to change that last year, so the default setting was that when you create a password, it was private, which is pretty important if you're doing it through a Chrome extension. But they have not yet changed that. So I did not roll out MyGlue. My clients didn't like, the one client I was testing with didn't like that. It was a real showstopper for me, and we ended up going with Passportal. So I used actually both products. I used Passportal for managing my personal passwords, as well as it also offers a program called Site where you can actually resell it to your clients, and it's got a really cool administrative feature that you can hand to your clients so that they can actually make their own changes through an assigned administrator. And that's the route we have taken, and I'll let Eric talk about his experience with MyGlue.
And that's the disadvantage of IT Glue not sponsoring us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a similar boat. I think I really like the intent, the idea of it, right? So when it comes down to practical, yeah, business use, we're finding that it has some permission issues that we would like shored up first before we push it out to our customers. We have also done some testing. We have a few customers using it for their own passwords and for their own documentation, but a lot of it and the way it's sold, and I think what we're really looking for is how do we give access to our documentation to our customers? And I don't think MyGlue is the avenue for that. MyGlue, I think, would work well keeping everything separated, but from default, the permissions get a little murky. So like what Tracy said, when you create a password, it's shared between both organizations. That's sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Well, it's shared between everybody in that company. So like if one of the employees creates a password, it's shared. But here was the other kicker that really turned me off. If in that organization you fire somebody or delete them, all of their passwords get thrown open to everybody automatically.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was just, I'm like, that really killed it there. Because I was, I had a client I was talking to about this was a bank client. And that's a huge no-no in compliance. You do not share usernames and passwords with each other. So it killed it. If it kills it, and we do a lot of compliance work, it just killed it right there.
So if that's the case, is each password have their own permissions to each user? So you could create a group, say, of a financial department, and only the financial department sees those, and you could add remove users from that. Is it because we're doing user permissions instead of groups?
I don't know. I couldn't control it. I mean, as soon as somebody created a new password, if they didn't do it through the web console and immediately set the permissions, everybody within their company, no matter who they were, could see it. No matter what. I didn't find a way around it. And if that person was terminated, it just threw the gates open on all of their passwords. Everybody could see it.
So I'm going to have to wrap this up to keep us on time. If you did think of more questions that we did get a chance to get to or come back later, we have an IT documentation users group forum that you could use online. Feel free to ask. I see Tracy and Eric in there all the time, as well as many of you guys. Feel free to check it out and join it. What I will send to you for registering for this event, one, I'm going to send you a survey. I want to know how we did. We can take it because we just want to get better. This is our second one. It's my second time using Zoom as a conferencing, first time having co-host. So we want to keep getting better and better and provide content that you want to see. It was from the surveys from the last meeting that gave us the idea to do an ITDUG specific panel with other users. We had 2 other people who volunteered to be on. I just didn't catch them soon enough. So please look for the surveys the next couple of days. I will also send recordings out with the link to those who registered. Thank you so much for joining. If you did see anything, I know it's offered somebody a process. My email address is on this slide and will be on the recording as well. A little bit about what I do. I do process consulting and leadership coaching for IT firms. I've been doing it for 24 years. Learned a lot. Would love to work with you. If you want some help on these IT glue and execution, implementation, or ConnectWise Manage Autotask or anything in your IT firm, let's talk for an hour. See if we click. Worst case, you get all the free advice and something to work with. Thank you all for attending and participating. It was great. You made it easy to fill an hour with great content. And I hope to see you next month in our new webinar. Have a great one.
Thanks, Alan.
I guess I should say thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, guys.
All right, bye.